Jeffrey, you mentioned before around all of the different policies that are in flux, which, is from an RTO perspective and from a, staying across that and I guess an accreditation auditing perspective, chaos, right? And a nightmare. What do you think needs to happen, or what do you see is the next step from when all of these different policies shake out? What happens then?
I guess my concern is not waiting till they shake out and making sure we get some of the information in there up front, because the question you asked earlier about connecting the non-formal to the formal, how do we make it happen? At the moment, 97% of registered training organisations do training and assessment.
Yep.
So there's not a lot of recognition of prior learning. There's not a lot of assessment-only pathways.
Okay.
What that means is a lot of our policies are written around train and assess. They might allow for assessment only or recognition of prior learning. A lot of our current policies have, at least standards for registered training organisations, have the fact that non-formal and informal learning could contribute to a formal outcome. That's embedded in the forward of our current standards. It's embedded in the Australian Qualifications Framework. We don't necessarily use that, but it's there in our documentation.
Okay.
So making sure that what the new policies, the new standards are, still keeps that embedded, but in a manner that is usable for both the vocational and the higher ed training providers. Because when we talk about training and assessment pathways and we don't consider assessment-only pathways, then we're not considering people could be bringing their non-formal education into the system.
Right.
When every report, every report and survey that's commenting directly to the training industry is neglecting to talk about assessment-only pathways, that goes against what's actually in our standards and our policies, our national standards and policies, because they allow for it. Mm-hmm. But we're not implementing them well because we're not being asked to.
Yeah.
And where we are being asked to, we can get around it by pushing students to do a train and assess pathway instead of an assess-only pathway. And on a different perspective, where we are funding it, we're pushing a different perspective. So we need to ensure that it stays in our standards and our policies, but we need to ensure it stays in a way that it is actionable from the regulators, from the training providers, from the funding bodies, that everyone actually understands the context and what comes with converting non-formal to formal, regardless of whether that is I've done a Udemy course or I've been a Scouts member. How does that non-formal education then potentially tie into a formal outcome if the way we implement all our policies and standards is based on you've done the training and assessment as one thing?